Morning, and we've come indoors this morning. Um, any of you who live on the west coast of Scotland will have looked out the window this morning, might have just thought, did he really go out in that? Well, yeah, he did. Virtually hypothermic and just too wet, too windy, too dark, too horrible for filming. So I've come indoors to do Message from Mull this morning, and it's only the second time that I've had to do that in 71 messages, so that's not too bad. And quite ironically, today's message from Mull, I knew this was going to happen when I prepared it, is about dehydration and the effects of hot and humid weather. And we have anything but that. First day of the school holidays up here, and quite typical, very autumnal, late autumn type day that we have. Typical summer day on the west coast. But lately we have had some pretty hot weather and quite humid conditions. And although we have done a talk on hydration, I thought it might be quite good just to revisit that a little bit, because when we do get those conditions, it doesn't always happen up here, it is quite critical that we make sure that we're taking in a little bit more water. Now, we've said before in one of the talks, there is a talk on hydration on the website if you want to revisit that. And some of the stuff I'm going to do today is going over similar ground. But hydration is really important because we are about 60% water. And getting the correct fluid levels is really important for maintaining our blood volume, our blood pressure, our lubrication of our joints, maintaining a good digestive system, and it's really important for the removal of waste products. Our kidneys use quite a lot of water as we sort of filter and flush out toxins from our body. And if we dehydrate, then we tend to become a bit more prone to urinary tract problems, infections, and digestive issues as well, things like IBS, constipation, and sometimes diarrhea as well. So really important that we're getting enough water in, maintaining a good fluid balance within our body, and also maintaining a good electrolyte balance. Now, electrolytes are things like calcium, phosphorus, potassium, zinc, magnesium, and these are elements that we need within our body to maintain all our body functions, especially when it comes to muscle contraction and sending nerve signals, really important. And when one of the first things we see when people are dehydrated is sometimes they start to cramp up a little bit. You often see footballers and top level sports people, once they've been getting near the end of a long grueling match, especially in hot conditions, they're more prone to cramp up. So in hot conditions, our bodies are sweating a little bit more than we normally would, and sweat is your natural cooling system. So your body pushes blood to the skin, and then we have fluid that leaves the blood and passes out through the skin, and as it leaves the skin and evaporates, it takes heat away with it. And so sweating is your natural cooling system. Well, men sweat, women glow. And in hot and humid conditions, we glow a bit more than we normally would. And it's important that we get that replaced. And that's not just exercise, that's everything that we do in the summer conditions. So if you're out gardening, if you're walking, cycling, anywhere where you're outdoors and you're getting the effect of that sun, and indoors, because sometimes our houses become a bit like greenhouses, and not many of us up here have air conditioning because it's not really that useful for the majority of the year. Ease down in restrictions around lockdown might mean that you're heading off to warmer climates, tropical climates. And for tropical climates, what I mean is anywhere south of Leeds for the Scots. So it does tend to be a bit warmer down there, and I know a lot of you might be thinking about getting away for maybe a little break with other members of the family that live a wee bit further down south. So just bear that in mind. There is quite a big difference once you get a little bit further down the UK. as to what we experience up here. Although we have been the hottest place in the UK on several days, I've noticed on the forecast. So what should you be looking out for if you're getting dehydrated? First usual things are headaches and dizziness, fatigue, and also one of the best ways to tell if you're becoming dehydrated is to look at the colour of your pee. I know that's not something that you might be thinking about at breakfast time, but what we're after, I don't expect you to get the Dulux colour swatch out here, okay, and check things in the loo. But we're looking for anything from a colourless fluid to something that's maybe like a pale straw colour. It's once you start to get a sort of a darker yellow, then that's a good sign that you've become a bit dehydrated and you just need to start getting some replacement fluid in there. And it's really important because the human body sits in a quite a delicate temperature range, and any a few degrees too high, a few degrees too low, and we are into overheating or becoming hypothermic. I was probably there on the bike this morning on the under level. And some of the quickest ways we can rectify that situation is obviously get plenty of water in. If you're really struggling and you know you're going to be outdoors, maybe working in the garden for long periods of time, it might be worth looking at an oral rehydration little pack that you can get. Just try not to rehydrate with alcohol. Obviously, that's not going to work because it's a diuretic. It pushes more fluid out of our body, and caffeinated drinks are not the best. So it's still a decent way of getting water in, but anything that's got caffeine in it is again, it's a diuretic, especially certain sports drinks. So the isotonic stuff is okay because that is supposed to be more in balance with your body fluids. That's replacing some of those salts and electrolytes that we're missing. But be careful with sports drinks that have a lot of caffeine in them and other stimulants, because again, that's just going to add to the diuretic effect and push water out of your system. And if you are planning to be outdoors on hot days like that, it might be an idea to miss the midday sun. So maybe come indoors for a little while when the sun's at its highest and at its strongest, and maybe put your outdoor activities more into the morning and maybe later afternoon when the effect of that isn't so great. And obviously that's good for your skin, and we're not be so prone to burning. So remember your sunscreen, really important, and especially up here in the west coast of Scotland, the air is really not thin, but it doesn't have a lot of pollutants in it, and that means more of the UV rays are actually getting through to your skin. And when we suffer with sunburn, then we don't control our body temperature as well. And it's really important that we protect all those sweat glands that we have, all 2.6 million of them. So they're really important in terms of controlling our body temperature and making sure that we sit within that quite delicate range. And also, if you're outside, think about your clothing, obviously. So make sure the sunscreen's on, but you may also then want to get some light clothing on a hot day. Not today, obviously. And also light coloured clothing which reflects the sun's rays. Try to avoid close fitting dark clothing, because dark clothing absorbs heat, and that's just going to make you hotter, and that's going to make you sweat more and dehydrate you quicker. And in terms of how much should be going in, what we're looking for is about 1.2 to 2 litres under normal conditions every day. Obviously that depends on the size of your body and what you're doing with it. And that's usually about, if you had, there's my tea mug, that's going to be about 5 to 7 of those, something like that. In really hot days, especially if you're being fairly active, you probably want to put another 3 of those in if you can. And one of the best ways is just to have a water bottle close to you all the time, and that's something you can just grab and it is handy for you. Hot conditions, put some ice into it as well, keep it cooler. and then that will help to reduce your temperature as that cold fluid is going through your system. So that's today's message from Mull. Hopefully there will be a few of those days will actually come along, and we'll get some slightly nicer weather. I would imagine today is a day for being indoors, so you may want to access the website and do one of the online classes that's available there, because it's quite horrendous outside. Or you might just take the approach that I took this morning. There's no such thing as bad weather, just inappropriate clothing. But it is quite nasty out there at the minute, so maybe wait and see if it picks up a bit later on. And I will catch up with you on Wednesday for another message from Mull. And in the meantime, stay safe, guys. Bye-bye.